Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder. Today we're diving into Spire Global's latest 10 case of filing, and trust me, it's more than just your average oops, we forgot something situation. It's a story of audits, doubts, and a company scrambling to stay afloat. Let's get started. Spire Global filed an amendment to their annual report, and the reason is pretty wild. They released the initial report before their auditors, PricewaterhouseCoopers or POC, had actually signed off on it. And to make matters worse, the report left out a key detail that there was substantial doubt about Spire's ability to keep the lights on, or as accountants say, continue as a going concern. Yikes. Now, let's get into the real meat of this report. This is where we start seeing the challenges. They need to sell the maritime business, but we'll circle back to it later. And here's the kicker. POC even included a note that there's substantial doubt about Spire's ability to keep the company running. Let's hit the numbers quick. Looking at the consolidated statements of operations, net loss for 2024 was a whopping $102.8 million, much higher than the $77.6 million loss in 2023. Ouch. Their ARR net retention rate also went down, sitting at 93% in 2024 compared to 98% the previous year. That means they're not keeping up with their customer value as well. They're trying to pull the ripcord. Under assets classified as held for sale, they intend to sell off their maritime business to another company. They need to use the proceeds of the maritime sale in order to repay their debts. Now, let's talk about where Spire gets its money, as it's a potential weak point. They rely on a limited number of government contracts for a large chunk of their revenue. Government contracts are always a mixed bag. They are a consistent source of revenue, but also full of red tape and potential political interference. These government contracts can be changed or even cancelled at any time. Another big risk is the reliability of their satellites, since they are, after all, in space. If they fail, so does Spire's ability to collect and sell data. If the constellation gets hit by a meteor shower, a coronal mass ejection, or even a collision, it's game over. They also need to depend on third parties, such as launching them to space, and any problem with those third parties will hit their revenue and operating plan and will disrupt their business. And of course, there's always the risk of intellectual property theft. If someone copies their tech, they lose their competitive edge. One issue they acknowledge is not exactly helping inspire confidence. They've identified material weaknesses in their internal control over financial reporting. And due to the initial report filing error, they've had to classify their disclosure controls and procedures as ineffective as of December 31, 2024. If Spire doesn't complete the sale they say in the report, this could negatively impact the business. It gets even more complicated because the buyer might be backing out, forcing Spire into a lawsuit to try and enforce the sale. It is possible they may not be able to collect those proceeds. Finally, it's also worth noting the potential for some internal governance issues. Their bylaws have some pretty strict rules about where stockholders can sue and how much say regular investors get. The founders still hold the majority of the voting power in the company, so their decisions might not always align with what's best for the average shareholder. Now, what's the verdict here? Spire is in a tight spot. It depends heavily on a limited number of government contracts, and it sounds like they're having some trouble turning a profit. The big maritime deal may not be happening, and they are suing to get it resolved. This situation is not great. The space data market is growing, but Spire faces stiff competition, plus the leadership team is in flux with recent changes at the CEO and CFO levels, which always adds uncertainty. Spire is banking on this lawsuit to survive, but even if they win, their substantial debt and reliance on government contracts is going to keep adding pressure, and I'm not excited about their future and expect them to look for a bailout offer, such as a sale to a larger entity at a very depressed valuation. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, like and comment.